HMP Wandsworth, Britain's boiling point behind bars. Tucked behind a veil of London traffic and historic brickwork lies a relic of Victorian justice, Her Majesty's Prison Wandsworth. It is one of the oldest and largest prisons in Western Europe, a brooding Gothic monolith where more than 1,300 men are locked away, many inside crumbling cells, originally built in the 1850s. A site of state punishment for over 170 years, Wandsworth today is no longer a symbol of order or control. It is a national liability, a place so neglected, so chaotic, and so politically radioactive that even the officials sent to inspect it now admit the prison is teetering on the edge of total dysfunction. The 2025 inspection did not mince its words. Despite modest progress in isolated areas, Wandsworth remains deeply unsafe, overcrowded, and degrading. But this isn't just a report about mismanagement, it's about systemic failure and the painful cost paid by the men inside, the exhausted staff outside the spotlight, and the communities that inherit the broken lives spat out from behind its walls. If ever there was a symbol of Britain's prison crisis, Wandsworth is it. Once nicknamed the British Bastille, HMP Wandsworth is an architectural museum of punishment. It was built in 1851 using the panopticon layout, long star-shaped wings surrounding a central surveillance hub, designed to control through observation. Today, that same design is a nightmare for modern management. Narrow walkways, blind spots, outdated infrastructure, and decaying stairwells have made daily operations dangerous and dysfunctional. The prison officially holds just over 1,300 men, but its certified normal accommodation is only around 900. That means, on any given day, hundreds of prisoners are crammed into cells designed for single occupancy. Two men, often complete strangers, must share a space smaller than a disabled parking bay, complete with an open toilet next to their beds. In some cases, the flush doesn't work. In others, the window doesn't open. Many cells have no privacy curtain, and mold is often visible on the walls. For many prisoners, that cell is their entire world. They spend over 22 hours a day locked inside due to staff shortages so severe that wings cannot operate safely at full capacity. Education is sporadic, work is rare, fresh air is a luxury. The regime is described by inspectors as restricted, impoverished, and depressing. And for those unfamiliar with prison life, the word restricted barely scratches the surface. Time out of cell is now the currency of power inside Wandsworth. In theory, prisoners are entitled to several hours per day to attend education, see family, or exercise. In reality, most are locked up for all but 45 minutes a day, usually a shuffle down to the yard or a brief stint in the shower. That's if they're lucky. If staff are short, as they usually are, the door stays closed. Staffing remains one of Wandsworth's most damning failures. The prison has hemorrhaged experienced officers and now relies heavily on young, inexperienced recruits who are undertrained and overwhelmed. Some have never worked in prisons before. Others quit within weeks. Those who stay are often doing the jobs of 2 or 3 people, skipping breaks and operating in fear. This has led to a complete breakdown in trust between staff and prisoners. The officers are stretched thin, unsupported by senior management, and demoralized by a regime that punishes initiative. The prisoners, meanwhile, are left to rot in limbo, unable to progress in their sentences because the paperwork doesn't move, the programs don't run, and the gate to hope is welded shut. Wandsworth's facilities are a haunting blend of historic decay and administrative delusion. There are 5 main wings, A to E, with E wing recently used as a short-term medical unit, while C wing often holds vulnerable prisoners, or those at risk. Most cells still rely on slop-out conditions, prisoners defecating and urinating into unscreened toilets in full view of their cellmates. The segregation unit, known as the block, is a grim corridor of isolation cells, where prisoners in crisis or discipline are locked up alone, sometimes for weeks, sometimes with no exercise at all. Some men are placed there not for punishment, but because the main prison cannot keep them safe, a perverse misuse of solitary confinement in the name of care. Healthcare services are housed in a dedicated medical wing, but are under continuous strain. A lack of clinical staff, poor access to GPs, and endless delays in mental health assessments mean that many prisoners, even those on medication or with known psychiatric disorders, go days or weeks without proper care. One prisoner suffering severe psychosis reportedly went 9 days without contact from mental health professionals, despite urgent alerts. The food is another disgrace. Meals are often served cold and indistinguishable. One prisoner told inspectors, "We don't know if it's chicken, turkey, or rat." Portion sizes are small, and for those with dietary needs, including allergies or religious requirements, mistakes are frequent and dangerous. And while there is a gym and chapel on site, access is inconsistent. The gym is frequently closed due to staff shortages. The chapel, once a haven of calm and community, is now so underused that some prisoners didn't even know it existed. Privileges at HMP Wandsworth operate under the incentive scheme, where prisoners can earn additional phone time, better food, or more visits through good behaviour. But here, the scheme is meaningless. With no jobs, no education, and no activities, there's nothing to achieve or work toward. One prisoner said, "It doesn't matter how well you behave, you still get nothing. So why behave?" Phones, when they work, are old, limited, and expensive. Visits are chaotic, often cancelled at short notice. Legal visits are sometimes missed altogether due to logistical errors. Mail goes missing, and video calls, introduced as a lifeline during the pandemic, are offered too rarely, especially for men with children or foreign nationals with no family in the UK. But perhaps most disturbing of all is the rise in violence and suicide. In the 12 months leading up to the 2025 inspection, Wandsworth reported multiple self-inflicted deaths and dozens of serious self-harm incidents. One involved a man who hanged himself just days after staff failed to carry out daily ACCT checks. Another prisoner, found unconscious after taking a synthetic drug, was ignored for 15 minutes because officers assumed he was faking it. In terms of assaults, both prisoner-on-prisoner and prisoner-on-staff incidents are at record highs. Gangs control entire corridors. Debt, drugs, and intimidation run unchecked. Weapons are made from toothbrushes and razors. One staff member described Wandsworth as a battlefield where nobody knows who's in charge. And then there was the escape. In 2023, a terror suspect walked out of Wandsworth through a delivery area, sparking a national manhunt and triggering widespread criticism of the prison security protocols. The escape was not an anomaly. It was the inevitable result of years of neglect. Staff shortages meant the gate was left open. Paperwork wasn't checked. CCTV wasn't monitored. When the public gasped, those inside simply shrugged. It was just another day in a prison where chaos had long since become routine. So why does it continue? The answer is both simple and infuriating. HMP Wandsworth is too big to fail. It's a logistical hub for the capital's criminal justice system, feeding men in and out of London's courts and other prisons. Closing it would require massive investment, political courage, and a plan, all of which have been in short supply for decades. Instead, each crisis is patched with a press release. Each death is followed by an internal review. Each riot is rebranded as a disturbance. And each inspection that dares to speak plainly is met with promises that are never kept. As of 2025, Wandsworth is not a prison. It is a warning sign with gates, a place where policy has failed, where people are broken slowly and silently, and where the idea of rehabilitation is a sick joke told by bureaucrats who wouldn't last a week on the wings. It is the graveyard of hope, the proof that a prison can collapse without ever catching fire. It doesn't need riots, it riots every day in silence. A former HMP Wandsworth prison officer, who was filmed having sex with an inmate, has been jailed for 15 months. Linda de Sousa Abreu was identified by senior prison staff after the clip was shared online and quickly went viral. The governor of Wandsworth said Miss Abreu's actions had taken less than a day to undo the many years of work on behalf of female staff in all-male prisons. Miss Abro, 30, who was arrested at Heathrow Airport before attempting to board a flight to Madrid with her father, previously pleaded guilty to misconduct in public office. In a partial written statement to Isleworth Crown Court, Andrew Davey, the governor of Wandsworth, said many female staff at the prison had reported an increase in being hit on by inmates and were now considered fair game. Miss Abro and the inmates were filmed in a cell between the 26th and 28th of June. The Metropolitan Police said inquiries were ongoing into the two prisoners identified in the video. The court was also told that a further recording of her performing a sex act with the same inmate was found on her prison-issue body-worn camera, and Miss Abro had admitted to having sex with that prisoner on an additional occasion. Judge Martin Edmonds, KC, said the video that went viral was therefore not isolated and was part of repeated behaviour. A spokesperson for the prison service said, "While the overwhelming majority of prison service staff are hard-working and honest, we're catching more of the small minority who break the rules by bolstering our counter-corruption unit and strengthening our vetting processes. As today's sentencing demonstrates, where officers do fall below our high standards, we won't hesitate to take robust action." The Prison Officers Association, which represents prison staff, said it acknowledged there were a small number of corrupt staff working in prisons who undermined the work of others. A prison officer and the partner of an inmate have been jailed for a plot to smuggle drugs, 3 bottles of wine and 18 mobile phones into a jail. Guard Kwaku Boki, 59, was paid £360 by Donna Taylor to give the items to her partner, who was serving at HMP Wandsworth. Mr. Boki was caught with contraband during a search when he arrived for work on 21st April 2014. He was jailed at Southwark Crown Court for 6 years. Mr. Boki, of Moberly Road, who had denied conveying the items into a prison, was found guilty after a trial. Miss Taylor, 34, of St. James Road, Mitcham, was jailed for 4 years. She had previously pleaded guilty to conveying drugs and phones into a prison. Full list of items with 2.7 grams of diamorphine, heroin, 103 grams of herbal and skunk cannabis, 18 mobile phones, 17 SIM cards, 3 bottles of wine. An investigation found he had met Miss Taylor in Clapham, who had asked him to give to her partner Jerry Argumang. He was serving a sentence for a firearms offence at the time. Detcon Scott Pavitt said he hoped the sentences would serve as a deterrent to others who wish to engage in corruption. A prison officer has been jailed for 8 months after she exchanged phone calls and texts with an inmate and his wife. Kahinda Fajemisin, 37, from Woodley Road, Tooting, communicated with prisoner Clayton McCalman, 24, and his wife Masai Orbin Agareo, 25, from Stockwell, despite knowing it was illegal for the inmate to have a mobile phone. Miss Fajemisin, who worked at HMP Wandsworth, failed to tell her bosses that McCalman had a mobile, and both parties deleted the text messages so they could not be read by anyone else. McCalman, a convicted gunman who stashed a weapon in Mitcham Common, had an extra year added to his 10-year prison sentence for exchanging saucy texts to his wife and a mistress while behind bars. The prison officer also made calls to St. Orbin Agareo, despite being aware that it was an offence to communicate with the family of prisoners. Miss Fajemisin, who was jailed at Southwark Crown Court on Tuesday, the March 26th, initially told police that she did not realise Miss Orbin Agareo was Mr. McCalman's wife, but had become acquainted as they both took their children to the same school. However, the court heard her role included overseeing prison visits, including Miss St. Orbin Agareo's trips to see Mr. McCalman, so she knew the two were married. Miss Orbin Agareo and a third woman, Monica Merrin, 31, from Highgate, had also exchanged telephone conversations with McCalman. The illegal activities of the four, who were arrested in October last year, were revealed when undercover officers from the MPS London Prisons Anti-Corruption Team, LPACT, launched an investigation into them last April. Detective Constable Scott Pavitt from LPACT said, "Miss Fagemison's conviction is an example to any other prison employees who think they are above the law that they are not. Her responsibility was to ensure that prisoners abided by the laws within the prison, yet she joined one of them in breaking those laws. Mr. McCalman was jailed for 12 months, 4 months for the text messages, and 8 months for possession of heroin, but this will be added to his existing sentence of 10 years after an armed standoff with police on Mitcham Common in 2011. Miss Albin Agareo and Miss Merrin must both complete 80 hours unpaid work and ordered to pay £200 and £80 costs, respectively." The governor of Wandsworth Prison, Kenny Brown, said, "There is no place for corrupt members of staff at HMP Wandsworth, and we work closely with the Metropolitan Police to identify and prosecute them."